We'll need a motion and a second, and then Rachel will she will go through the roll call, and we will use that as our attendance tonight. This meeting of the Public Works Committee is being conducted electronically pursuant to Governor Bill Lee's Executive Order number 16. I would ask for a motion that conducting this meeting electronically is necessary to protect the public health, welfare, and safety in light of the coronavirus. We have a motion. We have a motion from Commissioner Blair.
Serino.
And Serino a second. All right. And Rachel, and again, this will act as roll call as well.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Commissioner Serino?
Yes.
Commissioner Blair?
Yes.
Chairman Cush?
Yes. All right. Thank you all for showing up on this election night. I hope it was not an inconvenience to everyone. I assume everyone early voted. It's amazing to hear nationwide the record attendance of voting out there. It makes me proud. It should make you all excited to be an American and that everybody is exercising their right. I just want to say one little thing about the election, and it's really simple. Whenever your man is appointed or deemed president, whichever man that is, at the end of the day, just remember we are one country, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, right? We shouldn't forget that. I left out the under God part, so let me add that. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So let's keep that in the back of our thought and try and preach that good word as we go forward, in spite of what upcomings, turmoils, parties, who knows, right? It's 2020. Who knows? All right. Enough of the politicking. Let's get down to business. Do we have approval minutes to approve? All right. If you don't mind, I would like to call on Vice Chair Piercy for approval of the minutes.
Well, Chairman Cush, usually after the preaching we pass the plate. Are we going to pass that?
Big bills, large bills.
Okay. I have reviewed the minutes and I find them in order. I do move for their approval.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
We do. If you will call roll, Rachel.
Commissioner Blair?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Commissioner Serino?
Yes.
Chairman Cush?
Yes. All right. I'm not sure that I see a representative from the Highway Department.
Yes, they're on Zoom.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
They're calling.
Okay. If you are...
Them?
There we go. Hey, everybody. Mary, how are you? If you would like to be the brains behind this operation, you are free. You have the floor. Or the TV or the camera, whatever it is, you have it.
All right, we'll let Greg do that tonight.
Okay.
Okay, what we have tonight for your consideration that was approved at the road board meeting yesterday is a budget amendment. This is moving money inside of our existing budget. It's not bringing money in from our fund ending balance. This is just a little housekeeping. We're moving in our Plainview line item for engineering services. We're going to decrease that by $200,000 and move that into our other contracted services line item for Plainview. Like I said, it's just basically housekeeping.
Okay. You're just swapping dollars.
Swapping dollars.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? We do. Sit tight. We'll have a roll call.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Commissioner Serino?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Blair?
Yes.
Chairman Cush?
Yes. Greg and Mary, what else?
That's all we have.
What?
That's it.
Thank you so much for that speedy report.
Hey, Happy to help.
All right. See you in November. All right. Building codes, Tanya, please. Front and center.
Good evening,
Good evening to you.
Chairman, Mayor, and Commissioners, and Merry Christmas, Commissioner P. So building codes, we had a total of 301 permits issued in October. 62 of those were single-family dwellings.
Hey, Tanya, hold up one second. Do you guys have files under your heading? No, I don't either.
Yeah, there was nothing posted.
Oh, okay.
Did you send them to, I didn't send them to public report. I didn't see them on there. I've looked 3 or 4 times today. So,
Oh, all right, well,
So just talk slow.
okay. You're making fun of me?
No.
Our reports are posted on our website. We usually get them up within a day or 2 of posting them, so they'll be on there tomorrow. So again, we issued 301 building permits in the month of October. 62 of those were single-family dwellings for a total revenue of $107,940. Because you don't have your report with you, that was down a little bit from last month and also down a big bit from this same month last year. This time last year, the revenue was $155,000 with 363 permits issued, although 101 of those were single-family dwellings last year. Last October, we had our highest single-family dwelling issue on record, so that's why it was so high last year.
I've got to think the wet October may have something to do with that just a little bit.
Possibly.
All right.
We had 1,658 inspections done with a little over 10,000 miles driven. Development tax, also a slow month. Development tax, we collected $460,500. That brings the accumulative total this fiscal year to $1,864,875. Compared to this time last year, we were at, looks like 2.7. So we're down significantly from last year. Anybody have any other questions on building permits or development tax?
Our development tax is less than half.
This time last year, we were at 2.7. This time, same time fiscal year, this year, last year.
So you're saying, so it started in March, it's November, so COVID hurt us that much?
Oh, well, it's
March to November is pretty much when we were in COVID season, so.
right. These numbers are from July
This will be
to October. This will
fiscal
be
year,
July,
though.
August, September, and October. So the first 4 months in our fiscal year,
8 months then before that, 7.
correct, correct.
yeah.
We're 4 months into the fiscal year. And this time last year, in the fiscal year, we were at 2.7 in development tax. Currently, we're at 1.8. So we're at 900,000, just shy of 900,000 less.
Okay, yeah, I see it now. We, compared to this time last year,
Correct.
we're down almost $1
Sorry,
million.
I confused you, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going fiscal year with development tax. That's how we record it.
But for fiscal year, Tanya, this month was 460,000.
460,500.
And where were we this time last year for the single month of October?
The single month of October, we were at 1.1 million. 1,125,000 for the month.
Two-thirds off.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any crystal ball view of? Yeah, okay.
I don't.
All right. Well, I mean, it is a little weird, blip on the radar for some reason, because, I mean, Bill Dodd's on the line, but, I mean, number of permits, talk to me again about the number of permits that were, well, maybe that's more of a, maybe Doug will have insight.
That's what I was just
yeah.
going to say. Doug might have more insight on available lots and stuff. He's got more insight on the activity of development and what's coming down the pike. So he might be able to give you a little better.
I would hate to think that pre-election year or election year, going into 6 months before an election, that it would impact the community $1 million or more. But you just don't know.
Probably got a right smart to do with the increased price of building materials. A lot of builders have just, they're on hold.
But and that's starting to come back down again. That is true. The price of plywood went up about 50%. So that is true, and that happened at the end of September. So that's starting to come back into where it's supposed to be.
That didn't start till September.
Correct.
Like the
Right.
last 10 of August. What I am concerned with is fiscal year is July to July.
July to June.
So July
Yeah.
to December, and then the first 3 months of this year, we're down that much. I felt like it would be way down from March until
Yeah.
So those numbers I gave you strictly this fiscal year compared to last fiscal year at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe Doug can have some insight on that. I mean, you drive around and they're still building houses everywhere, so that what I see and what I hear don't match up. So,
And we usually see a little bit of a decrease at this time of year because it starts to get colder. It starts to get, everybody's trying to finish out what they permitted over the summer. And so we do see a little bit of a decline. Last year was the exception. Last October was by far the best month we'd had in 6-7 years. So, and I don't know why last October, but it just was a record month. So a drop at this time of year is not unusual.
and apartment fees are also in that number, right?
They would be in the development tax number.
Okay, and
Yeah, we
if you'll recall, last year, we had 2 or 3, I'm going from memory, so that don't hold me exactly to it. It seems like we had 2 or 3 big complexes open up last year.
So the months with the larger, when it's closer to $1 million or a little over $1 million, that's typically because there was a large complex in one of the city jurisdictions or a hotel with a assisted living or something like that. We've had a couple of those.
All right, continue on.
All right, so zoning enforcement, we had a total of 180 inspections this month as opposed to, I don't have last year's, I'm sorry, but last month we had 176. So we're pretty consistent with zoning enforcement.
All right, is that the end of your?
That's it.
All right. We need a motion, and then if we have any discussion, certainly let's ask questions.
Motion to approve the report.
All right, Commissioner P., Chairman P., we need a second.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Serino. Any discussion, any questions?
I don't like the decrease.
I don't like the decrease. You want to help me increase development fees? Okay, man, all right. We just need to get our legislators to get on board with us. Go ahead, Rachel.
Commissioner Blair,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris, Commissioner Piercy,
Yes.
Commissioner P.,
Yes.
Commissioner Serino,
Yes.
Chairman Cush.
Yes. Andy, thank you. Anything else? Okay, all right. All right, Doug, why don't you come up and see if you can give us some good news about planning and engineering.
Good evening, everybody. I'll start off with the available lot inventory. And I'll kind of just get into continuing the discussion that Tanya started while she was up here, if that's okay. Our available lot inventory through the month of October, we have 823 available lots. Again, those are lots that are recorded on the ground, ready for permits as we speak. That's up just a tad from last month. It was 813 last month. The big reason that happened, we had a pretty large section of a subdivision, about 54 lots, that was recorded. And of course, lots have been released, but at the same time, the building permit activity didn't quite counteract that. Now, I will say, our office, when all this first started happening with COVID back in March and then moving on, our office did see a slowdown, at least in the amount and type of plans we were receiving. The activity wasn't so much on people coming in and getting building permits for like accessory structures, pools. The comment I was saying to most people is if somebody wants to get a pool in Rutherford County, they're probably going to have to wait 2 or 3 years at this point because we had so many applications for pool permits. I'd never have seen anything like that. So over the summer, things were kind of steady, but not overly getting a whole lot of plans. Now, a couple months ago, and Mr. Cush can vouch for this, I think it was in September's Planning Commission meeting, we had over 20 plats and plans submitted for our department review. That was probably the largest Planning Commission agenda just for plats and plans that we've received since I've been here, and that's over 14 years now. So as far as activity, now this month it's a little slower. Of course, we're starting to get into the holidays and whatnot, so that's not unexpected for a little bit of a slowdown toward the end of the year, but we do expect it to ramp back up coming the spring and fall, or spring and summer rather, of next year. So that's kind of what we're hearing, at least. Now we'll kind of see how COVID affects that as time goes on, but you know, we've been steady in our office, and I expect some of those plans that we received, preliminaries and finals, those are making their way through the development process. You know, they've been approved by the Planning Commission. The preliminaries have construction drawings. I know Mike and Sheila both are swamped when it comes to construction plans of new sections. So, I mean, there is activity going on. We're not suffering from a lack of things to do in our office. So.
Thank you, Doug.
I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm so curious it's killing me. We're voting on a 576-acre development.
Yes,
if that gets approved, and it's estimated at 900 lots, I believe.
1,100.
So if you approve that, does that 1,100 lots go into the number?
No, what'll happen,
Phases.
Right, it'll be in phases. Now, the first step of the process is they submit what's called the preliminary plan, which is the master plan. So one of these days when you see this report come before you, of course, it's broken up into two parts, recorded lots and then those that aren't recorded. You'll see that one show up in the not recorded area. So that number will go from, you know, right now it's around 4,300. That'll go way up whenever we see that. But as far as them developing the actual homes, that'll be by section. And they are proposing, when you look in the pattern book, they're proposing larger sections, like somewhere around 90 to 100 lots per section. So that should keep them moving along pretty good clip for a while. So, any other questions on the report as far as the available lot inventory is concerned? If not, Mr. Chairman, if you're okay with it, I will go into the rezoning report.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Very good. We have two rezoning requests for you. One that Mr. Harris had alluded to. I'll get to that in just a minute. But the first is for property located along Shelbyville Pike. It's about 5 acres. The property is zoned residential low density. They're asking for commercial services. And forgive me just a second. Right before I walked up here, I don't know what I did to this thing, but all my files went away. So I had to really quick open everything. So I got to find my point where I was. Okay, here we go. The information provided by the applicant for this application, they are proposing to rezone the property to build a construction office and equipment storage yard. This does fall under the construction sales and services activity classification in our zoning ordinance, which is allowed by right in the commercial services zone. There is a concept plan that's included with your agenda packets. It's not a planned development, so they're not bound by that, but it gives you an idea of the direction they'd like to go for the development. The property is along Shelbyville Pike, has access. It is a state road, so any new access drives or any improved access drives will have to have a TDOT permit. The applicant will also have to submit an engineered site plan demonstrating compliance with access and parking, landscape screening, and also our performance standards. There wasn't much discussion on this. There was discussion, however, about the aesthetics along the major corridors coming into the county. We discussed that a little bit, and we've actually set up a training for our Planning Commission members prior to our meeting in December. We're having a consultant that I'm familiar with come in and kind of do just a brief overview of how that might look. So that was kind of the big discussion point for that. The Planning Commission did recommend approval of that by a unanimous vote. The second application, again, this is what Mr. Harris was referring to just a little earlier. This is for property located along Franklin Road. This property is about 576 acres total. There's 2 properties involved. The plan that they've submitted is they're asking for a rezoning from residential medium density to a planned unit development, and they'd like to construct a age-restricted community. It'd be a 55 and up community. Excuse me, let's get down to my comments here. It's called Harmony. There are various minimum lot sizes and home sizes in this. The pattern book is also on your iPads. I will say this was a very large file. Despite my best efforts to reduce it, it still was about the max that I could get onto the iPad. So if you do open it, it runs a little slow. That's why. All roads are proposed to be private. Sidewalks are proposed on both sides of the streets. They have some features in here that we have not seen in planned developments before. A monotony code and color restrictions are proposed for this development. This is something that their HOA and the builders would take care of, making sure that they're not building the same unit next to each other or different color schemes and whatnot, which is an interesting concept. We've been meeting with the applicants on this project prior to it coming to the Planning Commission for probably about a year prior to them actually making their application. And the one thing we stressed was stormwater management for this property. The water that leaves this property generally flows to the north under Franklin Road to property directly across the street owned by the city of Murfreesboro, and then generally to the northeast through the Royal Glen subdivision. The applicant has set aside of approximately 31 acres for stormwater detention, but also an additional 33 acres of wetlands for wetland delineation. This has all been incorporated into their design. Now, those totals may change slightly when they get a more refined design, but those numbers should be pretty accurate. They're also proposing approximately 2-acre dedication of property along Franklin Road to Rutherford County for use as a fire EMS station or other public uses we would see fit. There's no immediate plans for the station to be built, but the area of the county has been identified as an area which could benefit from an additional station. There is a portion of the development, when you look at the pattern book, it's about 17 acres where the existing Burgess homestead is located. That's part of the development, but it's going to be separate. It's actually going to be a public road, and it's not going to be subject to the same standards as the rest of the planned development. And again, I'll point you to the pattern book if you have specific questions. Overall, there was discussion on this particular application on several different topics, including drainage. Again, we discussed that. Traffic, they are proposing to put turn lanes into both on Franklin Road. There's 2 main entrances to the subdivision, and they're proposing turn lanes into both of those entrance points. Enforcement of the age-restricted community, maintenance of private roads, wetlands. There was also some discussion on parking, and a suggestion was made to add small visitor parking pods throughout the subdivision. I believe the applicant's still kind of working on that part of things. But following extended discussion, the Planning Commission did recommend approval of the request by a unanimous vote. So with that, and the applicants were present with their development team at the meeting and gave a pretty detailed presentation. I would expect something similar at the County Commission. So, but with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Chairman Piercy.
So the age restriction starts at 55.
Yes, sir.
How long does that stay with that subdivision? Does it go on from each time one house is sold, new owners take ownership, or?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's part of their development, and it'll be within their restrictions and covenants, but it's also part of the zoning request as well.
So it will stay with it?
Yes, yes. If they wanted to change that aspect, they would have to come back through the process and go through the plan development process to change it.
But it could be changed?
Right, but going through the same process, but yes. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are these brick fronts?
A variety of material, yes, sir. Not just all brick, but brick, stone. He actually discussed, hold on, back up here.
While Doug's looking, the price range on these start at $400,000 and go to $600,000.
They're constructed with a mixture of brick, stone, and or cement board siding, is what their pattern book said. They're all single-family detached, too. I don't think I mentioned that. There's no attached product or townhomes. It's all detached.
One of the things that was discussed at the Planning Commission, two things that made this a very unique development was, the fact that it is a 55 and up community. We don't have very many of those in Rutherford County. Secondly, there is zero to negligible impact on schools. So, normally a subdivision this size would almost mandate a school just for a community this size, but this is not in play. So that, and the fact that these are more of the high-end homes, these are 55 and up, these people tend to become very active in the community. They do a lot of volunteer work. They do a lot of mentoring. These are folks that you would like to add to your community and get involved. So the Planning Commission was very excited about that.
Question. You said it would have zero impact on the schools?
Zero to negligible.
Could a family move in there that were fostering children?
The way they explained, I'm trying to think how they explained it. Mike, maybe you can-
Let me, per my recollection, Steve, let's say the grandparents who own the home have moved into this 55 and up community and for some reason had to take care of their grandchild or grandchildren. They could do that, but only for a restricted amount of time. It could not be a permanent basis. So they are very, Del Webb and Pulte are two big national leaders in home building and retirement type, particularly Del Webb, in the retirement deal, and they're very serious about you have to follow the rules, and it's 55 and up, no exceptions. If you bring a squatter cousin in, he's got a couple of days to visit, and then he's out.
And that's something that's enforced through their HOA. I mean, obviously, our zoning enforcement office and planning, we're not in a position to enforce something like that. But it is part of their zoning requirement. But they have a very regimented and strong HOA to help enforce for that.
The main reason I was asking the questions I've asked is on the school issue, because evidently land is kind of thin out there for a school site and pretty wet. So that was my only concern. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
4 of us went over back last February, I believe it was, Doug, to their location. They have a location in Mount Juliet, and they have one in Spring Hill right off of Kedron Road going into Spring Hill. And they're all over the country, so the senior adults seek them out and look for locations. But as Mr. Damasi said and the chairman said, they're very, very serious about who they let in, and it's for a very short period of time. I even threw a hypothetical out. I said, what if a gentleman who is over 55, his wife is 30, he dies of a heart attack. I said, what happens? Does she get to stay in the house? And they said, until we will assist her in helping her sell her house. She's not allowed to stay. And the same thing for children. So they're very strict about it. It's just, but it's a wonderful development. I mean, it's all senior oriented. Everything to do from pickle court to tennis courts to indoor, outdoor pool. And it's kind of a country club. It's a lifestyle community. And I think it'll be a great asset to our community.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. Commissioner
I did
Dodd.
want to just build upon that. This still falls under fair housing laws. Just want to make clear these restrictions are part of the federal guidelines. So it sounds as if there could be some discrimination in some of the comments we've made tonight, but just want to make sure everybody knows that this is under fair housing laws.
Duly noted. You're recognized.
So Doug, how much land is set aside for, I don't know how to say it, like a park? How much
Amenities.
is set aside for that?
More than is needed.
Yeah, let me see. I think
Same way with the stormwater.
Yeah. Between the stormwater and the the wetlands, you were looking at about 60 to 70 acres right there. They were looking at about 137 acres of just open space, which would include the clubhouse with a pool, kind of the things Mayor Ketchum was talking about, tennis and pickleball courts, walking trails. The wetlands would be included in that. So there's a more detailed breakdown in the pattern book, but it was overall about 137 acres of open space.
Any more questions for Doug? Trying to find the clubhouse picture. I thought there was one in here. It's just slow. It's slow.
Well, it's a huge pattern book, and
it's slow to load. I mean, it's like a country club. I would liken it as you drive up almost to a country club.
Mr. Chairman, one of the things that I know Pulte very well. I've done business with them. Very strong company. So one of the things that we get worried about is starting to develop it and not finishing it. So I'm very confident in that because that's a very billion-dollar company. So.
Right. Yeah. And even if that were to, like what you were saying, let's just say, for the sake of argument, something like that did happen, and they decided to sell the product, sell the development off to somebody else, they'd still be bound by this pattern book. But this is what's being approved. It's not, they couldn't just come back and say, well, you know what, we know they were going to do a 55 and up community, we don't want to do that, we're going to change it. We would tell them, kind of like I was talking to Mr. Piercy earlier, was that they'd have to come back through this whole process to do that again, to go back through that.
But if they wanted to build without doing that, it's got to be 55 and over.
Correct.
Okay.
Part of the deal. All right. Doug, what else do you have?
Just real quick, if there's no other questions on the zoning, I do have a budget amendment to bring to your consideration tonight. This is for moving money within our existing budget. We're moving some money out of our in-service training into our legal notices line item. This amendment is needed because of the increased publication costs due to the additional wording we have to put in there for COVID-19 language and the public hearings and where to find virtual access and those kind of things. So our notices have more words, and so they cost more to put into the paper. So because of that, we are asking for, again, just moving $2,000 within our budget from our in-service training to our legal notices line item.
Swapping dollars again. You need a motion? Or discussion first?
So moved.
And a second. All right, any discussion on this? Rachel?
Commissioner Piercy,
Yes.
Commissioner P,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherino,
Yes.
Commissioner Blair,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris, Chairman Cush.
Yes. All right, we need to approve Doug's reports, so we need a motion and a second for that. Can we do them
Motion
all?
to approve.
All right. Can we do them one time? Okay. Somebody,
Who made the first?
who made that motion?
I made the motion to approve.
Are you a second? Piercy's a second. All right. Mayor.
Commissioner Blair,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris,
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy,
Yes.
Commissioner P,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherino,
Yes.
Chairman Cush.
Yes. Thank you, Doug. Okay, this brings us down to convenience center concepts and landfill report. So, Mac, you might as well come up because you have the floor for the rest of the night. Let's see if we have what was loaded.
5 is
Convenience center concepts. Okay.
That's me.
If you will look at tab 5 on your SharePoint, you will see some renderings of some convenience center concepts. I'm going to emphasize the word concepts. These are some renderings of some proposals to put in for next year's budget request. These drawings were produced by the engineering firm that our beloved Jay Bradley, right? He is always in attendance at our meetings, and so he is representing tonight. The mayor has, often said that he wants our convenience centers to be convenient. He's also mentioned several times that our convenience center for the majority of our county are the first and perhaps only contact our citizens have with our county, other than going downstairs and paying their taxes. So it's important that everybody have a good impression, a good experience at our convenience centers. A few of these have been in the works for some time now for revision, expansion, changing of ingress, egress. So these three that were targeted are ones that are sorely needed for some rearrangement anyway. And Mac and the mayor, I'm going to let you take it from there if I've missed anything.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, for the last couple of years, we've actually been looking at Rockville and at Leanna. We have actually had, Mac, I believe we've had the compactors on, well, they're here. We have them not on site, but for the Leanna location. We finally got a bid for Leanna, and it came in way too high for what we thought. So about a month and a half ago, I got Mr. Bradley and Mike over in engineering, Mr. Salmon, we went over to Franklin. Franklin, when you pull into their convenience centers, it's almost a comfortable feeling when you pull in because of the signage, because of the way that it's arranged. You'll note that if you look at item number 1, the concept plan for item number 1, what I would like to see is for us to build ramps that the consumer would pull up on the ramp, and there's like a 3-foot concrete wall. You get out of your car, open the trunk, take your trash out, walk over to the retaining wall, and drop your trash down into the open top, instead of having to pull up and try to up and over and in, which is very difficult for a lot of people. Sometimes it takes 2, and it's much easier to do that. They have great signage. Their facilities are open 7 days a week. 7 in the morning until 6 at night, because it's convenient. As the chairman said, there's not another department that our people come in contact with. You go to Lisa's to get your license plate once a year. You go downstairs and pay your taxes once a year. But people come in contact with our convenience centers more than any other department in the county. I would like for us to, as we move into the next year's budget and start the planning, which will start in early February, to start looking if whatever it takes us to man and staff these facilities to make it convenient for our customers, our citizens, whether we go full-time or we go 2 part-time shifts, whatever it may take to do this. You'll see that we picked out 3, Leanna, Rockville, and of course our busiest at Weekly. That's our busiest convenience center in the entire county. And then use these as prototypes to move into the others, to make them as an improvement. We want to do some landscaping around it to make it pleasant. Good signage. You'll see where the other smaller boxes are where it's all your recyclables. People know where to pull up to. And they have there in Franklin, we went to the one in Nolensville and then another one farther on off of Franklin Road, and looked at those facilities. They have a kind of a large barn, if you will, like a barn shed, which they've made into, put a toilet inside. It's a pump and haul type process, as opposed to having our guys go to the bathroom in a porta potty. They actually set a tank down in the ground. When it becomes full, there's a little meter, that little ball that comes to the top and tells you that it's full. Alarm goes off, so you make a phone call, they come and suck it out. It's got an air conditioner in it. It's Mac has often talked about wanting something a little more secure, and I think on the ground, at least anchored to the ground in the event of severe weather. And of course, you know, we've lost the one in Eagleville. It burned last month. So I would like for us and Mr. Bradley to at least let us go forward and try to get some pricing of what it would cost to do these 3 centers, so we can be prepared to move into the next budget year. That is my request tonight of this committee. I thought we got to start somewhere, and now's the time to do that. Mr. Chairman, any questions?
Cooking oil, we accept at 3 separate locations: Weekly Lane, Walter Hill, and Rock Crusher. Motor oil, we don't accept at all. We do that at HHW, which is a good time to go into that, which is this coming Saturday from 8 until noon at the City of Murfreesboro Mulch Facility, 4765 Florence Road.
So these new facilities will accept it?
That's my recommendation. They're doing it at all the locations in Franklin. We just talk to them and tie into their same market. Make it convenient for our citizens. They take the motor oil, the cooking oil. They actually have a Goodwill trailer that's on site. Goodwill furnishes someone to stay there, and they've got a little kiosk for them to stand in. They have 2 metal boxes, like rail boxes, that are open. You can take carpet remnants in, drop it off. You can take mattresses in and drop them off, instead of them showing up on the side of the road, which is happening more and more. We've got to get serious about this and start this process. Now, some have said, well, we're putting out an RFP. What if somebody in the RFP comes in and says they want to take over the convenience centers? Well, they might, but we won't get there until we have a chance to look at the RFPs anyway. We'll start this process, but at least we'll have a design of what we want it to look like in Rutherford County. And if we say that, okay, you can do it, but I promise you they're going to charge us. At some point in time, one way or the other, somebody's going to pay to have it done, right? Either they pay for it, charge us, or we do it and have it already prepared, and we use that as leverage in whatever we negotiate back with them and how we handle our waste stream on whatever comes in.
Just looking at the drawings, the open tops with the ramp, so would each open top be for like metal, or you'd have signs where you would have to go up the correct ramp to know which open?
That's correct. In Franklin, they've got one that takes metals. They've got one that takes small construction debris. Now, we're not taking construction debris right now, but they are there, and they have a sign that says if your construction debris is higher than the bed of your pickup truck, you got to take it to the landfill and pay the price to tip it. But that's usually for the small homeowner who's tearing out a bathroom or something, and he's got some sheetrock and a little bit of wood, and as long as it doesn't go above the bed of the pickup truck, then they allow you to put that into the open top.
And I see the compactors. Did you say the other ones on the end, the dark shaded? They're
Which
cycle.
Those are your recycles, yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
And again, these are concepts. These have to be fine-tuned. Number of containers may go up or down, depending on area.
Or if you look at Rockvale's a little tighter. We've been looking at that, of where to come around the building that we just recently donated to the Rockvale Historical Society. And it's on the curve right there at the intersection, but I think we could probably work with our road superintendent and make that a three-way stop to help control the traffic flow, to keep it from being such a dangerous intersection with all the citizens pulling in and coming out at that location.
We've even pitched the idea of, at Rockvale, you know, across the street was our original convenience center, to use that smaller space for a recycling portion.
That'd give us more room
to spread out a little bit, but so that discussion's on the table as well.
And if you look at Weekly, our busiest, if you'll see the dotted line right by the compactors, that's our existing footprint where we are today. So the additional where the ramps would be put is on what is our property. Smyrna's been using that for their construction yard for the water department, and talking with the mayor and Mr. Hercules, they said, you know, they're happy to move their construction yard materials off of that and allow us to do this, because I'm sure as crowded as what Weekly is and how it backs up all the way to both red lights there on Weekly, it's going to continue to grow and get worse. So I'd like, Mr. Chairman, to get some kind of movement to proceed ahead on costing this out tonight, and working with Mr. Bradley and Mr. Nolan, and work up some numbers and come back to you.
Commissioner Piercy, did you have a question?
I did, for the mayor. Williamson County's where you went and visited.
Yes, sir.
Are their employees full-time or part-time?
They're part-time.
Will we have to, I know we'll have to hire more employees to do the 7 to 6, 7 days. Will we use part-time, or will we go ahead and put them on full-time?
Well, that's up to this committee. I think we need to probably look at it whatever we decide. You know, I'm throwing this out to the committee. Do we want to go 7 to 6? Do we want to go different hours? But they are going 7 days a week, so that's going to take more staff. But isn't that our obligation to handle the waste for our citizens? They're charging in Murfreesboro. They charge on the water bill. I think it went up to $10, didn't it, Commissioner Sherino? It's $10 on your water bill inside the city.
Yes, sir.
But Smyrna, Laverne, they don't charge anything because they have private haulers. So that's why our Almaville and our Weekly are probably two of our busier facilities for that end of the county.
I have one other question.
Yes, sir.
When we change from a flat surface in the convenience centers for the people to throw their trash away to a ramp with a 3-foot wall, will that change our liability for accidents?
No, sir, I don't think so. And Mr. Bradley, we looked at it. We've got pictures of it. I talked to the county mayor. I think what they were doing is they were allowing people to drop on both sides of the ramp, and because somebody stepped in front of another car and got bumped, so they just went to one side. So everybody that pulls up drops on one side, so they've eliminated that liability. But the same thing can happen without a ramp. You know, as it is right now, there's kind of mass confusion. If you go to Rock Crusher, it's kind of wild, you know.
So tonight you're looking for a motion to move this forward for design and price?
Yes, sir.
I'll make that motion.
All right, we have a
I'll
motion.
second it. Second.
We have multiple seconds, so pick whoever you'd like, Rachel.
Can I ask a question?
You may. The floor is yours.
On the Rockvale site, you don't have anything for used oil. Can you not make that to where we have that on this plan, or
Yeah,
for your pricing?
Yes, sir. That's my intent is that at the two sites that we looked at, in the covered building that they had, it was separated, but still under the same roof line. where they had this tank where you just walk into it and dump your local oil, your home oil. If you change the oil out of your truck, you take it down there and you just pour it down in there.
We'll add that to
Yes,
the
sir.
rock bill.
Yes,
It's not
sir.
on the drawing, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, that can be done. Jay's shaking his head, yes.
Matt, can I ask a question in that vein?
Yes, sir.
If we add anything to any convenience center in terms of, okay, we're going to start picking up oils, do we have to tell TDEC we're doing that? And do they have to give us some kind of a permit that we stick on the bulletin board that we're approved to do that? Or can we just do that because we feel like we want to do it?
We can do that, but we'll have to go through it and do a SWIP plans for each of those locations. We don't have a SWIP plan on any of those
Okay.
locations today.
But Jay's group could easily do that for us. Yeah.
It would too.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion on that? Does everybody clearly understand what we're doing? Okay. Rachel?
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Dodd?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Commissioner Sherino?
Yes.
Chairman Kush?
Yes. All right. That wraps up the conceptual for the convenience centers. Mac, we are ready for your reports.
Address Commissioner Piercy's question about the liability. It should help our liability because currently all the open tops are sitting in gravel, and as we move them in and out, it creates little gravel trenches, and it's a trip point. So if they're on that ramp, then they're on concrete, so their footing surfaces will be a lot better than what we currently have.
One of my concerns on the ramp and the liability was rain, slick, snow, ice, somebody falling over a rail, throwing their stuff in and not let go completely. That was one of my concerns on that.
And then the other thing that Jay and I will discuss, but when you use those ramps, it's more efficient if you use 40-yard open tops instead of 30s. You get a whole lot more capacity in one, and you've already got the ramp where you're going to get them up there anyway. So that, we'd look at changing some of those container sizes. And I still think you'd probably have some containers still flat on the ground just to have enough space.
They actually, at both locations we visited, underneath where the open tops would go, they put steel rails flush, which was kind of a strike plate for when the dumpsters come in and on the rollers. So they roll back right on those steel plates, so it lasts forever. Didn't they coat that, Jay, with those steel plates? Okay. I'm sorry? Didn't they coat those steel plates where the runners were for the... Okay.
You've been to our convenience centers, you've noticed where the compactor sits and then the receiver box is hooked up to it. It's sitting on those similar style steel plates. And in the center of that is what we call a guide island. And the rails that make the container sit on the truck would also fit on that guide island. So to help get it up close to where it goes, if you put a guide island under there, that would guide the container over there to be in the right position. Let me mention again, household hazardous waste. This coming Saturday from 8 until noon, we are accepting latex paint. So if you have it, please bring it because we're not going to accept it anymore. If you have oil-based paint, call our office and set up an appointment. We'll take that. If you have fluorescent light bulbs, we take those at Haley Road every day we're open. And if you have electronics, they still go to Haley Road. They don't go to this household hazardous waste event. Any questions on that? Sir?
8 to noon.
8 to noon.
8 until noon.
And again, will you tell the audience, TV land, where this is located?
4765 Florence Road, City of Murfreesboro's mulch facility. The entrance we're planning on using lines up with Singer Road. So if you're leaving Murfreesboro and headed that direction, turn left on Singer Road, cross straight over Florence Road, and you'll go right into that correct entrance. We may have to move it because they're looking at, I talked to the lady earlier this week, or no, later part of last week, they're looking at bringing possibly 4 30-yard open tops just to hold the paint. That's how many we used the last time we collected paint, and that was almost 8 years ago.
Inside the container, they just bring the paint that's inside the container?
Yes, to help the line move forward. If you'll have your items in some type of container, you don't have to get out of your vehicle whatsoever. The employees there will take those items from you. If you're bringing gasoline in your normal gas jug and you want the gas jug back, then they'll take it, they'll pour it up, and they'll eventually get your jug to you, but you'll have to pull out a line and wait. You're not going to hold up the line waiting on your gas jug. They'll take medicines and all kinds of stuff. If you go online, there's a really good advertisement that Ashley McDonald has done some work with that explains it really well. Any other questions on that? Okay, the landfill report, as you can see, we're still taking items into the landfills, just brush and off the rim tires only. We're experiencing a little bit of issue with our tire vendor as far as trying to get our loads hauled quickly enough. The downside to that is we have 3 trailers that we store those tires in. If they're full, we don't have any place to put tires, so we wind up having to send people back with their tires. That's happened twice in the last 2 months, but I've talked with the vendor and they promise that they'll do better. Any questions on the landfill? Convenience center, they're still staying rather busy. As the mayor mentioned, we're not accepting any construction demolition material at this time. We're accepting 3 bulk items and 1 fixture, what's normally in your kitchen trash can and your recyclables. So that's still going fairly well. We're still collecting more trash than normal. We were fully staffed on drivers, and that lasted for 4 days, and we lost 1. So we're down a driver again. We've been running some numbers. Currently, we've been doing a single stream recycling program at the school system and in some of the county buildings. That single stream commodity costs us $55 a ton when we deliver that to Waste Management in Nashville. If it's good, clean quality stuff, it's $55 a ton. If it's contaminated, it's $55 a ton to process it, plus $150 a ton for the percentage of contamination in the load. So we may need to look at getting with the school system and doing the only recycle we do would be paper and cardboard, and do away with the plastics and the metals. The $55 a ton is more than any of those commodities are worth.
Matt,
Sir.
Does it take a rocket scientist to look in there and tell if that's contaminated or not before it goes to Nashville?
No, it doesn't, but when you dump in a front loader container, the driver can, if the lids are open, he can see from his position what's in the top. And then the new trucks have camera system that shows you what's going into the hopper. The old trucks do not. So if he's driving one of the old trucks, he doesn't have a clue what's falling off in there.
There's no way we could determine here before we truck it to Nashville whether it's contaminated or not?
Yes, we do. We try our best. Now, the schools are doing really good on contamination. They're not dinging us on contamination with that. The plastic loads in the convenience centers are the ones that we're having problems with. And the roll-off drivers, there's some centers that always has a good load, and there's some that always has a terrible load, and there's some that is just iffy. So the roll-off drivers have the authority to look at the load and determine if it's contaminated or not. And if they deem it's contaminated, then it goes to the landfill. Now, are they always right? Well, sometimes you see some trash bag and some laundry baskets and stuff on the top of the load, and you get it to the landfill and dump it. That was all that was in it. But it's hard to tell what's underneath. But we're going through the RFP process, and hopefully we'll get that out soon. So hopefully we'll have some businesses that'll line up to try to help us do something that's where it's easier to recycle, so contamination is not as large of an issue. But the China sword contamination is what caused that. We sent as much trash over there as we did anything else. And as I said earlier, we're still hauling a little more trash than we have been in the past before the COVID thing, and that's without construction and demolition materials. Any questions?
So if you go to Nashville with your recycling that's contaminated, do we leave it there?
Already dumped it on the floor, yes.
No, they charge us $55.
If it's a plastic load out of convenience center, which is just plastic, they're not charging us any processing fee because it does not have to go through the sort line. If it is contaminated, then they'll charge us $150 a ton for the portion that's contaminated. So they'll look at that load, they'll take a picture of it, and if they think it's 10% or 50% or whatever, that's that much of the total load. Now, those loads of plastics, if you notice them in the convenience center, they average less than half a ton because you're hauling a lot of air. Did that answer your question?
It's nuts, isn't it? Yeah.
Glass, our loads of glass, they charge us $45 a ton for a load of glass, if just to process it too. The mayor has talked before about doing some glass crushing and trying to do some stuff with it that may be, what we'd look at or somebody proposes in our future.
Why not just take it to the landfill?
It's the cheapest thing to do. Economically, that is the cheapest thing to do. Environmentally, it's not. And if we get the people out of the habit of recycling, it's going to be very, very hard to get them back in it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
If we just had a little waste to energy facility, we could just take all that nasty stuff and burn it in to make a nice fuel of some kind.
But if you think about the numbers that we've been throwing in our other meetings, our solid waste only meetings, TDEC says it's a little over a ton per person per year. I don't know what our census says we're going to be, but we'll say we're somewhere around 350,000 people, so that's 350,000 tons. If we control, not necessarily haul it ourselves, but control the destination, final destination of those 350,000 tons, we've got enough trash to have our own facility. We don't need somebody else's.
Speaking of RFP, since Mac brought it up,
All my fault.
it is your fault, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Our attorney, our beloved attorney, is putting his last set of eyeballs on the RFP and should be out no later than next week to launch. I mean, big time launch. So he's just got to get over one little legal hump that's giving him some angst, and after that, we're good to go. All right, Matt, continue. I'm sorry, the interruption.
That was all I had, unless you got any other questions. On the convenience center things, on what the mayor's wanting to do, Jay and I had a little meeting today, earlier, and we talked about some things that we'll have to do to be open after dark. Of course, it's already dark. We're going to have to light them up like a football field. So we're going to have a little bit of expense there. And then what Commissioner Piercy brought up, you're looking at increasing the hours. We're going from 37 and a half hours a week to 77 hours a week. So then we're going to have to look at trying to bring in employees. Full-time employees would probably be easier to get than part-time. And then if the center's open, then you got to have the trucks that operate. The big thing that we've got to work through is currently at 11 o'clock on Saturday morning, we don't have a place to dump our trash anymore. You'll see on the reports the hill yard. We start taking things to the hill yard, and all day Sunday goes to the hill yard. So if we're open that many hours on Saturday and Sunday, we're going to wind up having to increase the capability of the hill yard with containers, trucks, and drivers.
None of which is impossible. It's just going to take some coordination and some money.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Fleet maintenance facility to take care of all of them.
Yeah, you want brand new shiny vehicles and trucks, yes. Well, that's why we're moving it on to some final concepts into budget to put some kind of a number on what it would cost us. Yes, Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask Mr. Nolan, do you have a call from anyone about the smell?
Have a call from anyone about what?
About the landfill smell?
Yes, we get calls quite often about the landfill, and I'll remind them really quickly that is not our landfill, and I'll give them the number to call.
Yeah.
The reason I asked, I went to the Channel 3 this morning, to tape the news update, and the gentleman who worked there, he's come ask me, how many, have you get any call from about smell? He said, in my area, I have bad smell.
Yeah.
He live in toward Manchester Highway.
Mr. Jernigan is over the landfill, and I called him one evening last week. It's about 5 o'clock. I'd stepped outside to head down and gather up paperwork, and I walked right back in the office, and I called him. And he knows where our office is, 1220 West College Street. It's the old Armory building. I said, there's an odor coming out of the east wind that you're going to get blamed for. But you're too far north for this east wind to be coming across your property. But it smelled just like the landfill. It had the same ammonia smell to it and the musty dirt smell. So Jeremy said that he was going to leave his office right then and see if he could go track it back and see where it was coming from. But it's not a landfill. It was the way the wind was blowing. There's no way it was coming from the landfill.
It's probably chicken manure, wasn't it?
It could be, but it didn't smell quite like that.
They've been spreading some in the last few weeks.
Right.
Different places.
Usually we have a real strong odor at our place, but it's from Lewis Bakery, so it's a real nice odor. Makes you hungry.
What's funny is I have an occasion to talk to the city higher-ups that would be over the wastewater and that department, and they swear that smell is not coming from their wastewater facility down the street from Republic. So there's a lot of finger pointing, as there always is. A lot of he said, she said, but you know, you can't hide it. There's a smell. You know, Republic, when I did the tour a few weeks ago, they've even got misters out there and they put flavor in it, or an aroma. I'm not gonna eat it, but it's an aroma. What was it? Cherry and a couple others. And one of the neighbors said, you know, man, I'm not a really big fan of the cherry one. So they quit doing the cherry one and put some other berry flavor in, and she said that smells a lot better, so stick with that one. So it's just funny stuff. 2020, weird year.
When I was a driver there in the early 90s, going up the Hall Road toward the disposal facility area was tomato plant growing on the side of the road. So I kept watching that tomato plant, and it wound up with a nice red tomato about the size of a baseball. So I stopped and picked that tomato. And I cut into it just to see what it was, and it had that same odor as the landfill. It was pretty looking, but it didn't smell good.
All right, Mac, what else do you have?
I don't have anything.
All right, we need a motion to accept his reports.
So moved.
We have a motion, and we need a second, and we have a second from Commissioner Piercy.
Commissioner Harris? Yes. Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Blair?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Chairman Cush?
Yes. All right, any other discussion? Anybody have any thing they'd like to get off their chest? All right, seeing none, we're about to adjourn. I just want to say, last night at steering, we said farewell to Joe Frank Jernigan, who, because of his health and his battle with COVID, he thought it would be best for his constituents that he stepped down. And it was a heartfelt letter that his wife stood up and read. It was an emotional evening. And he is a legend in local politics. And I hope he comes to full commission and that we all get a chance to say farewell. But at least at steering, he came and tendered his resignation. But he walked in on his own, upright, talked to all of us, chatted. It was good to see him, but he'll be missed. So, nothing. Meeting adjourned.